Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Kebby Yarns with Big Will. Of course, you're here with Big Will. Hopefully, everyone has had a great week. Myself, I had a pretty average week. I was working from home, but as well, last night was the kickoff of the 2022 NRL season with the All Stars game between the Māori All Stars and the Indigenous All Stars, both men and women's. And if for those that didn't watch it, the Indigenous side got up over the Māori women's for the women's game, and then for the men's game, the Māori All Stars beat the Indigenous All Stars in the men's. All in all, it was a cracking afternoon of football where it's just got the blood boiling for, not blood boiling I should say, but the adrenaline running for how excited I am for this rugby league season, and I have the same sort of feeling that other people are sort of in the same boat as me. But of course, rugby league is not what I wanted to talk about today, guys. It's something that I've experienced myself, but something that reared its ugly head this week, heading into the games of last night. Like I said, something that I've experienced, but something that I did observe in the last 7 days leading into the rugby league matches last night. It's a term that not too many people hear about, but it's certainly a term that a lot of people have experienced, especially if you are Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander. Lateral violence is what I want to talk about today. For those that don't know, lateral violence is just a product of a complex mix of historical, cultural, and social dynamics, and it's a spectrum of behaviours. Basically, it could go from gossiping, jealousy, bullying, exclusion, probably feuding within family systems or communities, and as well as it could be physical violence as well. And what I want to talk about today are terms that you would hear with lateral violence, ways that people can conduct or project lateral violence on others, and as well the effects. And there's no such thing as positive effects of lateral violence. I do believe that there is no winner when lateral violence shows up in communities. So some of the terms that can be found with lateral violence is a major term that is used is the word coconut. So for those that don't know, coconut, of course, visually a coconut is black on the outside or brown on the outside and white on the inside. And I've been called a coconut before. I know a few people that have been called coconut, and it's basically it's that umbrella term where you may be black, but the things that you do or the things that you say, how you dress or however, that's not inherently black, so to speak. And it's a term that it sort of damages you in a way where, okay, because myself, I'm dark skinned, so of course I'm not going to be white enough to hang with my white peers comfortably. But then when I hear coconut, I hear that, okay, you're going to call me that means I'm not black enough to hang with you or hang with my black peers or my family members. That's the thing, I've never been called a coconut by family members, only people on the outside of my family system that probably don't know how much culture I actually do follow. But yeah, coconut is definitely a big term in terms of lateral violence and how it's projected on others. I've also been told that I don't sound black, in speech quotes, because what does that even mean to sound black? It's definitely something that, you can't really indicate or not, you know what I mean? But yeah, those are some of the terms, basically you're not black enough sometimes is what lateral violence means within Indigenous communities anyway. Of course, if you have any more terms, please comment down below, or maybe stuff that I haven't said in terms of, like I said, terms of lateral violence. Let me know of other things that probably has been said to you or something that you heard about. But yeah, there's different ways of lateral violence. So now we've went through the terms, we'll go through the different ways as to how someone projects lateral violence. Also, with that being said, lateral violence is not necessarily something that that an individual projects on another individual. It's actually more so a group act in a way. It's something because there could be a certain family or a certain community that then looks at another Indigenous person and be like, okay, he's not going to be one of us. You know, he or she acts different. He, she, they act different to us. Of course, there another way of lateral violence is, shunning people because of a sexual identity or a gender identity, sexual orientation, like stuff like that. You can't be gay because that means you won't be black, or stuff like that. Colorism is definitely one where, for those that haven't heard of colorism, so for myself, I've heard it a lot where, okay, I might be dark skinned, but then people automatically assume because of my dark skin that I have all of this knowledge of all Indigenous culture and I have an insight as to what black people feel. Of course I have an insight, but I'm only 1% of such a big community. You know what I mean? I do identify as Aboriginal and Torres Strait, but then my Aboriginal side, it's something that I'm still learning because, my great-great-grandmother was part of the stolen generation and my family are still going through that journey to find out who our mob is, but as well as we're still trying to figure out certain, words in our language. And, like I said, we're just on that journey. But yeah, colorism, definitely a big thing because, like I said, there are some people that believe that you can't be Aboriginal unless you're dark skinned. And that's not just from outside, because we get a lot of that from, non-Indigenous people, but then people experience that within the community. And one of the examples where I was saying before about what I've observed this week is that the Women's Indigenous All-Stars team this year, just by visuals and by the visual test, it was most of the players were fair-skinned. Nothing wrong with that at all, you know what I mean? Because of what's happened in terms of colonisation and invasion, you are going to get Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that are fair-skinned. Nothing they can help, nothing they can fix about it, but it's something that we have to accept as Indigenous people, that there will be fair-skinned Indigenous people because of European, European invasion, but as well as there have been, race mixing. There are mixed families out there. Something, like I said, that we can't help. And more specifically, one of the players, Kira Dibb, she, on one of the pages that I'm on Facebook, she was getting a lot of hate from a lot of comments saying that she's not black because she didn't identify in high school or she didn't identify then. I was actually reading up on Kira's story, and it was something that I was very touched by because in terms of her knowledge of her Aboriginality, it was something that was only told to her in high school, or it was told to her later, like in her teenage years, where she found out, but then now she's going on her journey to trying to actually find out where she's from. And, all props to her to be able to go out and, just make an effort and time to find out who her mob is. And that's something, like I said, for myself, that even though I'm dark-skinned and I'm from North Queensland, I'm still on that journey to find out as well. Of course, I'm probably a bit further down than what Kira is on her journey, but connection to our culture is a spectrum now because of previous injustices on our people. It's just something you have to face. And for us that have a certain level of knowledge of cultural, cultural traditional knowledge, we have that basic knowledge or even just a certain level, we shouldn't shun our mob, or we shouldn't shun certain individuals or families that were withheld from their culture. And it's disgusting to see how much hatred was towards the Indigenous Women's All-Stars side because of the fact that they were, in speech quotes, too white. It was a whitewashed team, people were saying. And, they were saying, we should have more dark-skinned players. Not saying that there haven't been any dark-skinned players to play for the Women Indigenous All-Star side, but just the fact that all these comments were coming out, it was, like I said, that was what you would call lateral violence. The bullying, the shaming of, you're not black, you're white because of your skin colour. Okay. And these are some of the things that, make up what lateral violence is and how people project it on others. Of course, another way of lateral violence is hating on your peers for taking part in culture or not taking part in culture. Like I said, culture is a spectrum. Like for myself, I grew up, predominantly in a Torres Strait Islander household. Most Torres Strait Islander people are of the Christian religion or demographic. So I grew up going to church. I was singing songs in language, but it was mainly like religious hymns. Whereas at the other end of the spectrum, you have people that do cultural dancing. You have people that, I can cook certain cultural dishes very well, but then I still have to learn how to make a cup murray, which is basically, cooking underground like how the Māoris have hangies. But yeah, taking part in culture or not taking part, it's a spectrum. It's something that people have to understand that because of what's happened, it's not, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture is no longer a set culture where everything is out there for us, because there are some families, some communities that were ripped away from their culture. Just the fact that the existence of Aboriginal missions where people were taken from their community and moved to a different state, moved to a different part of the country during those times, there will be people that wouldn't know where they're from or what kind of cultural practices they can do. Yeah. And, those are different ways as to how it can be projected in terms of lateral violence. With all that being said in terms of the terms and the ways of lateral violence and how it can be projected, of course there are them flow-on effects. And there's no such thing as a positive effect of lateral violence. It's all negative. Nobody is a winner when lateral violence rears its ugly head. There are some of the effects that, can occur within an individual's mindset and their soul, is that they have low confidence, low self-esteem, isolated feelings, and as well no sense of belonging. And with all those, it can really affect someone in a way where they feel as though they're not enough. They're not good enough to be part of their family. They're not good enough to be part of the culture that they so desperately long for. Like I'm saying, in terms of Kira Dibb's story, her journey is only starting out, and later down the track, when she has further knowledge and further understanding of where she's from and who her mob is, I feel as though she'll only grow stronger. And just like with any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander person, once you figure out where you're from and visit, or even just know who your family is, you basically feel like a superhero in a way where, okay, I know where I am, I can proudly say where I'm from, and that gives me the strength to confidently walk into a room full of white people and be like, you can't tell me differently. Your prejudices won't hold me back from being who I am, because I know in myself that I can go and be part of my own family, but as well I can come and be in the same room as you and have the same equal opportunities, but for the fact that I'm a black person in a system that was designed to keep me away, that'll be the biggest strength. Not just for Kira, but ones down the line. The future leaders of this country that are going through the same effects of colonization and invasion. And what I wanted to say as well, guys, is, like I said, colorism is still a big thing with what was being said, not just about the Indigenous Women's All-Stars team, but as well as Kira Dibb in particular, is that former government and, the previous injustices on our people, they were, in fact, trying to breed out the black. They were trying to breed out the dark skin within our peoples. And the fact that people forget about that, not just, of course, outside the Indigenous community, but the fact that they forget about it within our communities is insulting, but as well as it's just ignorance. And it's something that I'll forever stand up for the people that don't have access to their culture because they were withheld from it. I've had a few of my mates tell me that, there was Aboriginal people in their bloodline, but, it was never talked about because, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even today, there are still families that are ashamed of being called Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander because of the fact of the stigma behind it. Of course, it's fake stigma because it is such a proud and historical culture. We're one of the oldest continuing cultures on planet Earth. So, I even have I had one mate that told me that to be part, like their family, how they used to tell people because few of their family members had darker skin, or not dark skin, but like the olive skin. They knew they were Aboriginal, but to be accepted by the community they lived in, they were telling people that, oh no, it's because we're Greek, or it's because we're of Mediterranean descent, because it was much more acceptable to be foreign, or it was more acceptable to be European than First Nations. And it's sad to say, but this happens. It continues to happen. And just this week, in the year of 2022, in the new millennium, it still occurs. You know what I mean? There's no such thing as people knowing who they are and where they're from and being proud of who they are. Because the fact that lateral violence exists as well as racism, you get people that are too scared to come out because they feel as though, not scared to come out, scared to identify because, like I said, they experience lateral violence or they've experienced it. So they're too scared to identify because they feel as though because of the colour of their skin or their certain knowledge of culture, they're too scared to do it because they don't want to feel dumb. They don't want to feel as though they're inadequate within their family systems. So you get those mob that are too afraid to come out because of the fact of all these negative impacts that it can have on someone. So they stay quiet, live their life, but then they may live their life not comfortably because at the end of the day, when you don't understand where you're from or you don't have a sense of belonging, which is human nature. We always need to feel as though we belong to a certain social group. We do it throughout our lives, where we connect. In primary school, we connect to a group of friends that sort of have the same interests in us, like sports. In high school, it's a bit more in-depth, but it happens the same. Even outside of school, when you graduate and enter the workforce or enter university, you will always gravitate towards a group of people that are like-minded, most likely that look like you, but as well probably face the same struggles as you do too. And with all that being said, guys, in terms of trying to combat lateral violence, it's definitely something that can only be addressed and combated by people within the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. And for those Indigenous listeners that I do have, we have to combat it early, and we cannot let it get to the level of being normalised, which in some communities and some families it already is. So it'll be harder to try and, combat that, but continue to call out when you see it. Call it out when you see it, hear it. Even when you see someone that they're uncomfortable, have a yarn with them, see what they're feeling, and see what... It's not necessarily something that has to be said to you, but you can be friends with someone that was directly impacted. So that indirect impact that you may have, it could have been directly impacted by a family member or a friend that you have. Like I said, challenge it when you see it. Of course, guys, with all this being said, this is all just personal experiences and personal opinion. So if you have experienced lateral violence, please message me or comment, or, if you have any more questions for me, please just let me know, because it's definitely a journey that I've experienced within my personal life, and I do believe that it's affected almost everyone within a community, within the Indigenous community. And I guess before I leave here today, guys, what I want to leave with you is that, most of our culture was taken from us. This in turn closed the door for many of us to learn and understand our cultural protocols. It's now a journey for everyone, and what we know as a set culture is now a spectrum, because there will be people at different points of their journey. And just like our elders and families that have come before us, we need to move forward together and help each other out when we can. Because if we try and do this alone, whether you're going on a journey of trying to find your Aboriginality out or your Torres Strait Islander heritage out, if you do this alone, props to you. If you can, do it. However, if you can't, reach out, send me a message if you'd like. Send other people messages that are probably going through the same thing, but have conversations if you can't do it yourself. Because when you start to reach out and ask for assistance, of course, watch out who you ask assistance for or who you reach out to, because then there may be some backlash that comes with it, depending on who you ask. So, into this next week, guys, I want you to all, stay safe, stay proud of who you are, because at the end of the day, you shouldn't justify your blackness to anyone that isn't within your immediate family. Because as long as you know, as long as your family knows who you are and where you're from, pardon my language, but fuck them. And that's all I'm going to say, guys, because like I said, lateral violence is ugly. It's a killer of people, but as well, it's a killer of souls. Because individual journeys, they may, someone could be on a journey right now and building up their knowledge and their confidence within a cultural aspect, a cultural space. But then they go on Facebook and see the division that is caused by people by commenting on the whiteness, in speech quotes, the whiteness of the Women's Indigenous All-Stars team. They doubt these women's Indigenous heritage because of the colour of their skin. It's, like I said, it's a soul killer, because, like I said, if there are a mob out there that are on this journey of trying to find out who they are and trying to gain that culture back for not just them, but for their children and for their future, they cannot have, not just their own children, but even their nieces and nephews that want to know. They're trying to build up the family stronghold that our culture was once so powerful in terms of that knowledge. Sorry if I am rambling on, but just this week it was, like I said, it was disgusting to see how much it can be projected by certain groups, certain individuals, how it's projected on others that are just trying to find themselves. Okay. And yeah, guys, I can't really say much more than that, but that's basically what I wanted to talk about. Lateral violence, like I said, is a killer of the soul, of the mind, and of the body. Because the effects of lateral violence can lead to self-harm. It could lead to, low self-esteem, low confidence, no sense of belonging. And basically that's all, like I said, that's all I have to say today. But thanks, guys, for listening to my podcast. I have a few, just cracked 30 subscribers. Woohoo! Of course, thank you for all those that subscribe, all that listen and give me views. And just on this topic today, guys, if you have any more questions or any comments that you'd like to make, please comment down below. Or you can follow me on Instagram at bigwilchronicles. And yeah, you can probably message me on there. And yeah, just reach out. And for those that are going on their journey or need confidence to start their journey off, message me, because I'll support you in any way I can. Of course, only virtually, but I'll support you and give you the power that you need to fight on and find out who you are. But yeah, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, guys. Thank you for all your support and all your love. Peace out and have a safe week.